Welcome to Let's Be Well Together podcast. We're your wellness check-in team. Join us each week or when you can. We enjoy exploring wellness concepts and reminding you to make time for wellness. This is episode 110. It's another week of Let's Be Well Together podcast. I'm John Webster and I'm here with Noura Saad. How are you, Noura?
I'm good, John. How are you doing?
I'm well. And I'm kind of excited because I'm trying to learn about different kind of belief systems and whatnot. Mm-hmm. And I think we're coming up to Ramadan in March. Yeah. And you were telling me that you could tell me a bit about that. So I'd love to hear about it.
Yeah, I'm Muslim. So Ramadan is a very important time for us. It's a holy month. It's going to be starting this year on March 10th. It's quite a significant month for us in the Islamic calendar because it's the month that the Quran was revealed. Mainly what Ramadan, I'm sure our listeners might know, is it's focused on fasting. We always hear how, the fasting and the dry fast, there's no food, there's no water from sunrise to sunset. And we do that every day for a month. It's quite a journey. There's a lot of praying and a lot of worship that takes place at that time. And it's quite a significant month for us.
That sounds really hard to me. I can't imagine. I can imagine maybe not eating during certain hours, but not eating or drinking. That would be a real challenge for me. Is there anything you do to prepare yourself, either mentally or physically, leading into it?
Well, we're encouraged to wake up before the first prayer. The first prayer starts the fast. Before the first prayer, we're encouraged to have a light meal, something especially that won't keep us thirsty throughout the rest of the fast. Have lots of water. And usually folks will have some yogurt or something light, some fruit. And that usually tends to sustain us throughout the remainder of the day until we break our fast during the fourth prayer.
You mentioned the first prayer and the fourth prayer. How many prayers are there in a day?
There's 5.
So there's 5. And what time is the first?
It depends on the sun, the rising and the setting. Right now, as we come into March, it'll be at just around 6 a.m. And as the days progress, it'll become earlier than that because obviously our days are getting longer. So, yeah.
So that means you wake up before 6 a.m. and make sure you have at least something to eat and lots of water to set yourself up for the day.
Yep. So if there's anyone out there that's wanting to become part of the 5 a.m. club, we'll maybe take on Ramadan as a challenge because that'll be one way to wake up early and get your meal in before the start of the fast.
Whenever I ask people about religious beliefs and traditions and ceremonies and whatnot, I make sure to tell them I'm not asking you to speak for everyone in your religion. But what about Noura? So what, for example, do you get out of fasting during the day during this period?
I find after a few days, once the body's used to it, I find that the clarity, the mind becomes a lot clearer, especially once you've been fasting for a long time. The body just, you tend to go inwards, right? And I think that's the significance of the fasting is because a lot of our days are focused on, what are we going to eat? And there's so much socializing around that, right? So when that's taken away, we have time to do a lot of reflection, do a lot of worship. That's pretty much the emphasis of this holy month is going inwards and reflecting, not only on the year that passed, but on the year to come. So I really lean into that is to really see where I need to make progress, in my spiritual journey and my connection with the divine and set myself up for the rest of the year.
Does that mean, for example, that the feeling of being hungry, in part, that helps you to remember to introspect and self-reflect and think about religion and that type of stuff?
Absolutely. Yes. One of the purposes of Ramadan is to reflect on the privileges and the fortunalities that we have, especially in our world today. We don't have to look far to see that, having a nice meal is something that we're very fortunate to have. So that's also part of the reflecting is to be thankful and content with, what we have in front of us.
Sometimes when I ask people about their religion and they're sharing a tradition with lots of other people, that comes into play as well. The fact that I'm doing it, but are so many millions of other people in the world doing it. Does that create a type of bond? And is there some kind of social feeling that surrounds that?
Absolutely. I think some of the best days that I can remember as a little girl was when I'd be in Egypt and we would be breaking our fast as a family. And then I would kind of sneak away and go into the balcony, and it would be just completely silent, John. Like there's no one out in the road.
Right.
Everyone's at home eating, having their meal. And you might not know the person outside, but there was definitely a camaraderie, a collective bond during this time for sure.
You say break the fast. So what time does that happen?
So the fourth prayer it'll be falling at around, I believe, 7:00, 7:30, around there. And again, it changes depending on when the sun sets. So yeah, just after dinner time.
And you said, I think it starts on March 10th this year. When does it end?
So it'll be for a full 30 days. Eid is the celebration that follows Ramadan. So that will start depending on the sighting of the moon, which is what we declare the end of Ramadan. It might fall on the 9th or the 10th of April. So a full month.
Do your attendances at mosque stay the same? Are there more? How does that work during Ramadan?
So we increase in our prayers. The 5 daily prayers stay the same. We increase in our prayers. However, especially during the night, Quranic recitation is highly encouraged. Even acts of charity, whether monetary or just actionable things that we can do for our community, are highly, highly encouraged. And folks like to go to the mosque, break fast together at the mosque, pray together at the mosque. It's quite a beautiful time.
A lot of Christian religions have church on Sunday. There's some with Saturday. In the Muslim religion, is there a day that you go to mosque traditionally?
Our day is on Friday. So Friday prayers. Yeah, we have a sermon. The imam, which is our form of a priest, will provide a sermon, and then it'll be followed with a prayer.
Mosque is on Friday. Is there a time of day?
It's in the afternoon. So roughly at around 12 to 1 p.m. is when we have our Friday prayer.
Does that coincide with one of your times to pray?
Yes, the second prayer.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what about kind of traditions? Are there any kind of classic ones that surround Ramadan in terms of family get-togethers or anything of that nature?
Yeah. So when we come to break our fast, we're encouraged to break our fast with family and with friends. You'll see a lot of get-togethers happen. It's quite festive. There's a lot of food because, we acknowledge you've been fasting for quite the full day. Just to share a quick little thing, we break our fast with a date. So dates are held in very high regard in Islam because it's quite nutritionally dense. So that's one of the things with water and dates, we break our fast. But yeah, it's a great time getting together with family and friends.
And I guess if there's 30 days of it, there's 30 opportunities to break the fast with different people.
Absolutely. Yeah.
By coincidence, when it came to dates, when I started running, I'm one of these voracious readers, right? So I think I'm going to read all about it. And
yeah,
I was training for longer distance runs where you try and get little gels or snacks on your route. Mm-hmm. And I was all about whole food. And I found out that dates are really good for that. And so I was taking dates when I ran. And I remember at one point reading, I think they're called medjool dates.
Yes.
And there was an old expression about how 2 medjool dates can help you survive in the desert for a whole day or something like that. So yeah, I'm all about the dates too. Do you ever think about this year I want to focus on one thing or next year I want to focus on another thing? Or do you try and kind of focus on all the traditions each year?
I try to set myself up for success. So doing the things that I know I can attain, at least partially if possible. I think what I'm looking forward to, John, is just shutting it all down, shutting all the technology and just, all the distractions really, and just really going inwards. I'm looking forward to just having some quiet time to really get into the Quran. It's our holy book, and to be able to dissect it and understand the teachings behind it. So that's really going to be my focus this year. But that can change, I might try and focus on just getting through the fast itself.
Well, on that point, are you saying that because there's a tendency to avoid using technology while you're fasting, or is it just that that's something that you like to do as you introspect?
I like to. I find when I'm distracted, and unfortunately for me, technology tends to do that. It's quite a weakness, unfortunately. I like to just shut it down and just, have some quiet time and some time for myself to just connect with my divine, the divine power. So.
Well, this is great. One of our first sessions together with our new co-host, Noura. It just happened to be right before Ramadan, and fantastic. We got to hear a little bit about it. So thanks, Noura.
Thank you. And to anyone celebrating, I wish you a Ramadan Mubarak.
Guests are giving their time, expanding our minds. It's week 2 of our break from our normal interview format. I'm taking the time to go over what I think is a practical and common sense approach to wellness and balance that works for me, and I think it would work for anyone. In just over 2 years of working on the podcast, I've learned so much from guests and co-hosts. It's a nice time to revisit and provide a summary. And last week we heard about wellness categories and activities and the wellness check-in that I came up with. And today I'm going to focus more on balance. How do you find balance between the various categories, and then wrap the whole thing up? So let's get back into it. So there's 3 steps that sum up my approach, and anyone can do these steps. First, step 1, identify my categories of wellness. Step 2, figure out the activities that nourish each category. For me, because of how my brain works, I make bullet point lists, like the ones in my book. And then step 3, develop a wellness check-in. When I'm feeling off, I think about my categories and the activities, and I see if I can identify some that I'm not paying attention to, and see if that explains why I'm feeling off. If the experiment works, then some variation of muscle memory is going to kick in, I hope. And I might start doing the activities that bring fulfillment without reminders. And that's the journey I'm on now. I'm now finding that I'm doing activities that foster wellness in a whole bunch of different categories, and often they're interacting, and it's changing my life for the better. I'll give you an example one day of what struck me. A whole bunch of them were working together. I had been training for a marathon, and I injured my hip slightly. It hurt to run, but not to walk. And I still wanted to get miles on my legs. So for that period, I started walking to work. And meanwhile, a podcast guest had told me about a public library service for audiobooks called Libby. I would be walking to work and listening to an audiobook, and I really liked it. So much so that I kept walking to work even after my injury stopped. Separately, to try and help the environment, I had gotten a transit card so I could take the bus home. Here I was, walking to work and taking the bus home on a regular basis. And it was a great way to start the day, made me feel energy. And as I was walking, one day I realized, I'm like, holy cow, I'm being physical by walking. Intellectual wellness and artistic wellness are being enhanced by reading literature through the audiobooks. I was having social interactions on the bus. My spiritual, in terms of having time to think, a kind of meditation, helping me feel connected to people and things outside myself. On economic, I was saving gas money and wear and tear on my vehicle. The environmental, obviously, I was containing my carbon footprint. And mental, because the long walks were helping my frame of mind. And another guest on our podcast talked about resilience in a way I hadn't thought of, but I could see that it was working. So imagine that you're slammed with a mental health issue. What if our other categories of wellness are strong when that happens? What if they're weak? Imagine each category of wellness as part of an intertwined piece of armor protecting wellness. They create a shield. And so long as most pieces are strong, my shield is strong. My shield provides resilience. And I love that idea. That checking in and doing activities that foster different areas of wellness builds up my overall protection. I still might experience a devastating mental health issue, but if my other areas are strong, then maybe I can weather the storm better. I mitigate the detrimental impact. Another thing that occurs to me is that balance is person-specific and there's no one-size-fits-all approach. If each of us did a wellness check-in, we'd each come up with a different plan. Because the outcome depends on individual goals and circumstances. And you're free to choose what fulfills you, as am I. I'm a strong proponent of freedom of choice, and I would never judge the trade-offs people make. My approach is non-judgmental. So 2 examples of how balance might look different to each of us. Some people are not fulfilled by a life consumed by work, because it's not worth it to them to lose time with family, friends, and exercise. However, some people are fulfilled when they're consumed by work. They love working really long hours. They love what it brings to their life, and it's their choice. Or think about an athlete who dreams of competing in the Olympics. They must devote themselves to their sports for years. They probably focus on activities within, say, the physical, maybe mental, spiritual, intellectual categories to help them achieve their goal, but maybe economic goes to the sidelines for a while, or social might take a back seat. And how else can they achieve the highest level of performance? The quest to become Olympic athletes fulfills them, so trading off some categories for a period of time makes sense for them. Each of us can develop our own form of balance, taking into account our own inclination and hopes and dreams. And that's why introspection is so important. So what about balance? What does that mean? How can I achieve balance in many categories in a busy life when there's not enough time to work on all the areas at once? And initially, my plan was to try and come up with some kind of formula, how to achieve wellness in all these categories at the same time and hold it forever. But I realized that was misguided. We need to focus on some areas over others at different times in our life. I'm going to try and explain this outlook with a few examples. Surfing, something from the movie Eat, Pray, Love, and Sheila's dance balance analogy. So starting with surfing, I often daydream about how surfing would feel like, and I'd like to try it someday. I can imagine feelings of freedom, being at one with the ocean and experiencing the power of nature. And when something great is happening in my life, it's as if I'm riding a perfect wave. I tell myself I'll ride the wave as far as it'll take me. Sometimes I can do that and pay attention to other categories of wellness, but I've also learned to leave other categories aside for a time to get the most out of the wave. And being militant about continuous balance in all categories would prevent me from seeing where the wave will take me. It may even force me to step off the wave to devote time to another facet, which kind of defeats the purpose. And this was an important realization, and I now know that it isn't always harmful for me to leave aside other categories, even for long periods of time. In fact, it might be necessary for me to achieve balance over the course of my lifetime. What about Eat, Pray, Love? So in this Elizabeth Gilbert book, the main character, Liz, was seeking balance and to find herself, and she developed a rapport with a medicine man named Ketut in Bali after she had traveled to Italy and India. And Ketut proposed a daily routine of activities to help her. She started doing those. And at some point, she met a man and began to fall in love with him. Later, she broke off the relationship. Why? Because it upended her routine. She didn't want to lose balance or lose herself. When she went back and told Ketut, he was saddened to hear that she left the man. And he said, Liz, listen to Ketut. Sometimes to lose balance for love is part of living a balanced life. Think about that. Consider the rewarding benefits of a loving relationship. How many years of fulfillment does it bring, and how many areas of life are enhanced? It makes sense to upset the overall balance for a time if a person has a chance for love. You can stop balance routine for a time for that reason. It's okay to leave aside other facets for a time. And I really like what I call Sheila's dance balance analogy. Sheila's my wife. I was having a difficult time articulating my concept of balance as not being a spot to be at, not a place you arrive at, but an ongoing act of balancing. We were out for a walk. Sheila told me about her experience with balance in dance. Sheila is a dancer. She took dance lessons from very young and all the way through like Grand Ballet Canadien. And she said when she started as a kid, she thought of balance as a spot. She thought that if she worked really hard, she'd be able to catch balance and hold it, probably through strength. But in the course of her dancing, she never had time to stop and hold anything. She was always moving across the stage or spinning, just like all of us in our lives. And the outside forces were continually changing as well, not just her own movement. Just like us, life throws different things at us, stressors and other things. So she was forever finding balance as she moved across the floor, then starting to lose it, and then regaining it, and then starting to lose it, etc. And she realized that balance is a flow and it's ever changing. She talked about the skills she had to develop to regain balance. They eventually became second nature. And in this analogy, they're like the activities that foster the different categories of wellness. We want to perform them until they become like second nature. What you do to rebalance today will look different than what you do to rebalance tomorrow or next week. And you need to develop the wellness activities to keep regaining that balance. I want to take some time to focus on physical wellness, one of the categories. To me, it's essential, and it's where my breakthrough came from. The takeaway from my experience is that physical wellness is essential. Everything fell into place for me when I connected with my physical self. My book is called Accidentally Well because I had an epiphany about wellness, a breakthrough about wellness when I wasn't expecting it. Imagine my surprise when things started to make sense when I wasn't even looking for answers. And importantly, it didn't happen when I was studying or writing. It happened when I was running, when I was being physical. That's when I had my epiphany. And the significance of this point hasn't been lost on me. Getting in touch with physicality was the key to my breakthrough. Ask yourself, is there enough time in your day to exercise? Every day? 5 days a week? Twice a week? At all? Is there enough time in your life to prepare nutritious food for lunch and dinner? Is there enough time to get a full night's sleep? Please make time. Your health and wellness is at least as important as the items on any of your to-do lists. But how many of us give it priority? In fact, how many of us let ourselves be a priority rather than other people, maybe family, maybe children, maybe parents? How many of us even believe that the things we need to do to stay physically fit are as important as keeping up in the hustle culture we live in today? If you take nothing else from what I say, whether today or on the podcast, please consider the profound change I experienced by making physical health a priority, eating nutritious food in moderation, doing aerobic exercises, core and strength training, getting enough sleep, and more. Not for looks, but to feel amazing, to support my mental health and overall wellness. We all deserve that. I connected on the podcast with thinker and author Ryan Bush, and he studied insights of ancient teachers, practical philosophers, and cognitive scientists. And on episode 97, we talked about his book, Become Who You Are. There are many things in his book that struck me in a good way, and here I'll talk about one of them, signature strengths. In his book, Ryan talks about virtue in the sense of a Greek word, arete, which is focused on excellence. Part of the theory is that if we find ourselves feeling off, we think about whether we've been doing the activities that we admire in ourselves and that we admire in other people. There's a good chance we haven't been. We need to try and sort out what those activities are and start doing them, which is kind of similar to the approach I talk about. These days when we hear the word virtue, it sounds like an old-fashioned word. And maybe we think about acting morally in the sense of doing the right thing, what we ought to do. And I chatted with Ryan on episode 106 about ancient philosophy being relevant to everyday life today. He reminded me that back in Aristotle's day, ethics meant something different. It was about doing what's best in the sense of developing excellence and happiness and living a life that goes well for you. And at some point, it became about pointing fingers and transgressions and following the laws and being evaluated or judged maybe in the afterlife. Even for people who aren't religion, they tend to approach ethics in a legalistic way. They ask, what is my moral obligation? What ought I to do? But I like to think about the ancient Greek sense. How do I become excellent? Maybe by becoming a well-rounded person with a broad range of practical skills. And that's what they meant when they said a person had strong arete in ancient Greek. I read the book Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance by Robert Pirsig, and he made kind of a very similar point, and he quoted from a text by J.D. Kiddo called The Greeks. By a weird coincidence, I had the book in my basement when I was reading this, because I kept some of my books from studying ancient history from my university days. And Kiddo talked about the qualities of a hero in the Odyssey. And I love the way he explained it as a great fighter, a wily schemer, a ready speaker, a man of stout heart and broad wisdom, who knows that he must endure without too much complaining whatever the gods send. He can build and sail a boat. He can drive a furrow straight as anyone. He can beat a young braggart at throwing the discus. He'll challenge the Phaeacian youth at boxing or wrestling or running. He can flay, skin, cut up, and cook an ox, and be moved to tears by a song. An excellent all-arounder. He has surpassing arete. And I love this idea, getting back to the concept of well-rounded through practical actions. And it ties into my own intuition about wellness encompassing a broad range of categories and activities. And one of the things Ryan talks about in his book, Become Who You Are, is signature strengths. It's a concept that's discussed by Merton Seligman. We all have a few personal virtues that serve as the foundation of our identity. It's a collection of traits that each of us have invested most heavily in, the strengths we would be most crushed to learn that we didn't actually have. And whether you realize it or not, you do have a portfolio of these personal strengths that you monitor continuously. Maybe it's your subconscious. But if your subconscious doesn't see you doing these signature strengths, it starts to affect your outlook. So maybe yours are kindness or likability or ingenuity. But whatever these precious powers are, they make up your identity, your virtue portfolio. And one way to start to feel better is to try and identify new ways that you can exercise your signature strengths and cultivate the domains that bring them out. According to Siegelman, studies have showed that people flourished and their well-being improved when they were prompted to identify and use their signature strengths in new ways. There was a decrease in depression and anxiety. When well-being comes from engaging in strengths and virtues, our lives feel more authentic. There are ways to help us see our signature strengths. So Seligman offers a questionnaire on his website. I think it's called the VIA Survey of Character Strengths. Or another good one to do is just ask people close to you what they think your greatest qualities are. They'll know and they'll tell you. So I have a list of questions in my wellness check-in in my book, and I actually added one for this concept. And the question I added is, what are my signature strengths? Have I been performing them? And what activities can I perform to bring them out? Now, I see one unique and really important activity that's different from the others. The activity of balancing between the many wellness activities and categories of wellness. Achieving balance between them isn't mystical or theoretical or transcendent or anything like that. It's an activity. It's a skill that we can develop. And to me, it's the key skill to achieving wellness and balance. The various activities that foster each area are the building blocks, and they set us up. We have to practice and perform them to become stronger and make them second nature, hopefully like muscle memory. But then we need to find balance and then rebalance after we lose balance. That's the separate activity I'm talking about. When ancient Greeks spoke about surpassing arete, they meant people who showed excellence and were well-rounded. When I imagine a person at peace, let's call them an enlightened person. Here's what I imagine. They recognize different categories of wellness. They develop their building block activities that foster wellness in each category, including their signature strengths. Like Stoics or possibly Buddhist sages, they recognize that they're not in control, and they must take life as it comes. They're not trying to get to a spot or a state. They're not trying to hold that spot or state forever. They accept that balance is elusive. And even if balance is achieved, they can hold it for a short time, and they know they'll lose it and have to regain it. And they're at peace knowing that they cannot hold balance. The process of finding, losing, and regaining balance is a flow, which goes on and on. I also want to talk about togetherness. The last paragraph of my book says, wellness isn't a zero-sum game. Together we can share ideas, be kind to each other, and inspire each other. Let's be well together. And that's why I call the podcast Let's Be Well Together. I believe it's our best chance to be well together. It's also important for each of us to work on our own wellness. If we become more well, we can better help others. Think of the airplane oxygen mask example you hear so often. I interviewed life and health coach Ardith Correa, and she helps moms of kids who have neurodiverse conditions. And she saw something wonderful. When moms feel better and feel stronger and feel less stressed and less tired, it has a positive impact on the whole family. A good goal then? Work on my own wellness, then work together with others on our collective and individual wellness. I've told you about the journey I'm on, and my life isn't perfect, but whose is? But I definitely feel better, and I feel like I'm achieving more balance with the approach that I'm taking. It's a journey I'm very much enjoying, and I'm very optimistic about the journey to come. And I hope you can be optimistic about your own journeys. So that's it. I invite you to read my book, Accidentally Well. I hope when you listen to the podcast, you'll now have a better sense of why we cover so many different topics. And while although you may personally only be interested in, say, the physical or maybe other people in the economic, or other people in just hearing the stories of guests who share their experiences with us. I suggest we all benefit from hearing from all these different areas of wellness about lots of activities that foster wellness. And I hope you can see better now how it fits into my overall theory.
I'm Cameron, and welcome to another installment of the Adventures of the Starving Artist. Well, it's early February and springtime is apparently here, which, to be honest with you, has been getting me a bit down. Not that I don't love the sunshine, and the taste of warmth is kind of nice, but this is not normal, and it's not what it's supposed to be, and that's really been getting to me lately. I've been wrestling with the climate change and the existential dread that surrounds it, and doing my best not to freak out. Not always successfully, but you know, in the grand scheme of things, there's not a ton that I can do about it, so I'm trying to keep that in mind and be positive about it. And one of the ways that I'm sort of bending that into positivity is to try and do something useful and take that energy that's all pent up and boiling over and use it constructively. Specifically, given that I'm a musician, I figured I should write music about it. So I have been, and I don't have anything yet to show you, but the theme that I'm going with is based around climate change. And I was reading the history of climate change, the recent history, and I stumbled across an article that had caught my eye when it actually happened, to the point that I actually took note of it and had saved it in a document of ideas and words and stuff, about the hunger stones in the Czech Republic that came out in 2023? Let me look in my note. Yeah, in 2022, in August. The severe drought that had taken place revealed river stones, which were ancient stones in the Czech Republic and in Germany that were in the river, and they basically said, hey, if the water ever gets low enough that you can see these stones, a famine is imminent because there isn't enough water to irrigate. And I thought it was, alarming, of course, and terrifying, but also a neat thing, the hunger stones. So I've been trying to channel that energy into a song about hunger stones. And there's some interesting lines in there that I'm still finessing, but I'm trying to play with wordplay that centers around climate and how we got to the point that we're at. So there's the bull versus bear mentality of the market and how that dictates how we spend and where we allocate resources. There's a play on the bottom line and how we walk the bottom line. So I'm just trying to be positive and creative and make the most of a nasty situation. As I record this, it's like 10 degrees outside in the early February here, and that's just not good news. But I guess a more seasonal cold snap is inbound, so I'll buckle up and get ready for that. I hope you're enjoying the weather for what it is and making the most of it. If you're anything like me, try and shake some of the existential dread and the panic and take one day at a time. Be grateful for the sunshine while it's here and be grateful for when the cold comes back. That's all I've got for you. Hang in there, everyone. I'm Cameron. This is The Starving Artist. Until next time.
We're glad you're here, and we hope you're making wellness a priority. Hope you're getting something out of the podcast. And especially for people who are new, you might not know that the podcast was inspired by my book, Accidentally Well by John Webster. It's available on Amazon, Indigo, Barnes & Noble, pretty much anywhere where you can buy books online. And this is my pitch for you to buy a copy and have a read. I think it'll enhance the experience of the podcast, and it will also help us defray some costs because it's really expensive putting out a podcast. So grab a copy if you can, and in the meantime, enjoy the rest of the show.
Move that body like we're meant to do. I finished the push-up challenge.
Woohoo!
Yeah, for the month of February. I did push-ups every single day, and guess what the grand total was? So,
well, you were targeting 2,000.
Targeting 2,000. So, ready? Drum roll?
Yeah. What was it?
2350.
Well, that's crazy. you didn't used to do push-ups, did you?
I did not have push-ups in my regular
Right. But now
exercise routine.
Regularly go to the gym, you regularly work those muscles, but you weren't doing push-ups.
Right. There was one exercise that I was doing push-ups in between each rep.
Okay.
Okay. So like once a week.
Even before okay.
This challenge, I would do this. Like I kind of had these exercises that I did different days. So I do them throughout the week. And one of them I did push-ups. So I do about 30 push-ups a week.
Because I remember when you started, you said you started doing 10 in a row, and then you worked your way up to 15. And some of the people you talked to said, you can do 10, 15 push-ups in a row. I can't do that. And I was like, what?
Yeah. So I was just doing regular push-ups, and then I got stronger, and I was trying to do 75, but then I got in the habit of doing them basically every time I stopped and went into a building that I could do push-ups.
Oh.
I started doing them. So I did them
No way.
a lot. Yeah.
So you just walk in a building and drop and do 15 push-ups.
Yeah.
And people are like, hey, what's going on?
Well, they all kind of knew because these were my regular, like.
Oh, so they just thought you were showing off.
No, they didn't think I was showing up off. A lot of them knew that I was doing this challenge. So they were like, hey, have you done your push-ups yet? And I'm like, no, here I go. And I would do them. But often I would do them in a place that no one would notice me.
Okay.
Right? So that worked out really well. But I really felt like I got a boost of energy after I did those push-ups.
So I've recently, in the last month or so, gotten back to doing 10 core exercises. It includes a couple kinds of push-ups. And it's hard when I'm working on it. But when I'm done, I just have this amazing feeling.
Mm-hmm. You just feel like zzz. But the interesting thing was a lot of people talked about push-ups. Because I was doing this challenge, they asked me, what kind of push-ups do you do? And they tell me what kind of push-ups they do. And I was like, I didn't realize there were so many.
There's so many
variety of push-ups, right? Like there's the female push-ups or the woman's push-ups.
What's that?
So that's just when your knees are on the ground. You still have a flat body, but your knees are on the ground. So you're doing your push-ups more on an angle instead of more like plank size, the regular push-ups. You could do wider armed push-ups. You can do closer arm push-ups. So your fingers are touching. And that works a different muscle. Yep. You like to do runner's push-ups. Yeah.
So I'll say more about that. And at the gym, I see people doing them with dumbbells in their hands and they go deeper.
Yeah. Another one I heard about was a spider push-up.
What's that?
So that's really interesting. You take your one knee and bring it to your shoulder while you're doing the push-up. Push-up, and you bring that knee in. And then you bring your other knee in. Oh. So that's like a spider push-up. And then...
When I used to take Kung Fu, we did fingertip and knuckle push-ups.
Interesting. Fingertip and knuckle push-ups. So many different types of push-ups. And I honestly feel like when I do different push-ups, they do work different areas.
They do. Well, okay. So tell me, you've just done a month of push-ups. Does it make your body feel any different? Like, do you notice anything different?
I definitely feel like my arms are stronger.
What about your core? Have you noticed anything in your core?
I feel like my sides, the sides of my core feel stronger. I feel like I have to hold them tighter. So yes, I'm sure it does work my core, but I don't feel it in my core as much as I do my arms and my back.
That could be because you work your core anyway. Like you always work your core.
This month, I'm going to now do some core exercises every day.
Oh, cool.
So I'm still incorporating the push-ups, but I'm only going to do 60 a day, but I'm incorporating some core exercises. So I'm going to do that.
When it comes to my core routine with my 10 exercises, I do regular push-ups, which are the ones you described. Just basically you drop and do them. And I actually try and work my way up to doing 50 in a row.
Amazing.
Right now I'm not doing that. I'm up to 40. Because when I start, I usually start, having not done them for a while, I start at 25 and then just add a couple or 2 or 3 a week. But I also do something called a runner's push-up. And I think most people would look at it and say it looks like a yoga push-up. When I was learning how to run, I really liked the run experience. They have really good videos for running form and how to run, and also how to train, how to warm up, how to warm down, and how to strengthen yourself. And that's where I got it from. So if you look up the Run Experience Runner's Push-Up, you'll see a great video. But basically your arms are to your side and your elbows are in. You come forward a bit. And so when you're doing it, it's all kind of triceps and arms, not really shoulders and stuff like that. And they're a lot harder.
Well, the thing that I loved about doing this challenge was that it wasn't an exercise. I wasn't going to work out. You know how you plan to do your workout and you're doing this. It was just 2 minutes here, 2 minutes there. Like anyone can do this. And it just really invigorated my work schedule. I felt so alive and so much better. And it kept my mind busy. I was like, when am I going to do this? When am I going to? So I made my day go faster. So I really enjoyed that.
Well, one of the most amazing things I like about this is I'm so amazed at how adaptable the human body is. And this is one of the very real ways where you can try something that sounds crazy, sounds unachievable, and by the end of it, your body has changed and you are capable of doing more things. There's a thought. Popped up while running. I'm always pushing the envelope on my pop-ups. There's supposed to be running pop-ups, things that come into my mind when I'm out for a run. And then I started doing walking pop-ups. I did a biking pop-up and even once on the bus pop-up. Well, I'm stretching it again. I'm working from home and I just made a coffee and I was just waiting for it to finish. I walked to the back window and looked out. It's winter. There's snow on the ground. A squirrel was running by on a path, ran up a tree. Then I caught a couple of birds. I was watching the birds. And then I saw the tufts of some grass blowing while the coffee was being made. And you get kind of that calmness, from when you see nature. And I thought, when we got this place, we had to pay a bit of a premium because it backed onto a park. And I imagine earlier times in my life when I'd look out a window, maybe I lived on a busy street and I saw apartments, or I lived in a neighborhood where I looked at the back of a house, all great stuff. But I really think that when I stop and look out our back window and see nature, it's made a big change in my life. And I also feel kind of lucky because it wasn't like the reason why we bought the place. But in retrospect, now that I've seen that, I think, you know what? If I had to do it again, I think I'd look for that because it's so relaxing and calming. It's me.
Yeah. Just let me say, flip side of the coin. Hello, everyone. It's Elise here with Stephen.
Hello.
We are here today, Stephen, to talk about how we got into the field of education.
Yeah, we've both been in it for a few years here, and my understanding is that our stories are very different.
Very different, yeah. And our experiences in education are very different. That could even be a whole nother topic. But Stephen teaches high school students, and I teach kindergarten students. So opposite ends of the spectrum. But Stephen, how about you share with us, how did you get into the field of education?
Sure. So it's a long story, but I'll keep it short. I currently teach high school science, and I didn't always plan on doing that. In fact, when I initially made my list of things that I wanted to do, I thought it would be easier to make a list of things I didn't want to do and then narrow it down from there. And education was one of those things I didn't want to do. I was really interested in pursuing pharmacy. Ohio, which is where I'm from, is one of the states that has multiple schools that specialize in pharmacy. And I was at the University of Toledo, and I studied for a couple of years, and I was doing pretty well, but it became more and more clear that pharmacy was not the direction that I wanted to pursue because, well, one, my professors, most of them were pharmacists, were kind of jerks.
Oh, yeah.
And I was just thinking, I don't want to become this. But secondly, and this is the most important thing, is that I went into pharmacy because I wanted to help people. And I know that's cliche, but this is a realistic thing that an 18-year-old wants to do. And I was not that. I could tell. And I knew that I needed to make a change. So I looked at the different options that were available to me that could use some of the education that I did and could still be helping people. And education was on that list. So I ended up transferring schools, spending a few more years in university, and here I am today.
Here you are today.
Yeah. How about you, Elise?
Well, my story, a little different. So it's so interesting how we could end up in a similar spot, but from such different places. I know growing up for me, I was a big part of my mom's dance studio. So I was always watching her teach the students, and it was always something I aspired to do, to teach dance to the students. So once I reached high school level, I was able to become an assistant teacher and a teacher teaching dance, and I just loved it. I loved seeing the growth in the students throughout the year. I absolutely loved seeing their year-end performances and just reflecting on how far they'd come and how much work they had put into it and how I was able to help mentor them to get there. So it was a feeling I definitely loved. And then after that, I moved on to university. And in Canada, in order to teach, you have to do an undergraduate degree first. And then after that, you apply for your Bachelor of Education.
Right.
So I thought I'm going to take this time in my undergrad to kind of explore something I've always been interested in. So I really explored classical studies, which is ancient civilizations, and archaeology. It was something I was always interested in, and I absolutely loved studying it. I loved my time there. But after I was done, I thought I'm really missing that feeling that I got from teaching dance. And I wonder if I would like to pursue teaching as my ultimate career.
Right. And this is where our paths kind of cross here.
Exactly. So I decided to test it out by going to teach abroad. So I chose to teach in South Korea. And that is where I met you, Stephen.
Yeah. And you loved your experience so much. You did 2 years there that you decided to pursue teacher's college.
That's it. And then here I am in the world of education. And I still find that I get the same feeling from when I first started teaching to now with my students, which is amazing.
Absolutely. And people tell us that it must feel so good to have a job where you can have that satisfaction and fulfillment of making a difference. And honestly, that's true.
Please remember that we're not providing advice. We hope to inspire you to work towards balance, and we urge you to consult with qualified people if you need advice. The people on the show are speaking in their personal capacities. Their views expressed are their own, and don't represent the views or opinions of their outside contacts, their employers, or anyone else. We try to get things right, but we can't guarantee everything we say is correct, or that the things we talk about will work for you. Let's be well together, and let's be sure to do that in a safe way. It's sign-off time. It's John here with Elise and Sheila.
Hello.
I'm only going to talk about one thing on sign-off, which is I just had a heck of a time keeping my 10K a week streak going because I went out for a run. Sometime last week, I tweaked a little muscle. It's kind of hard to explain. It's in my back, just under my kind of, let's say, left lung rib area. And I was able to do weights and stuff, and everything was fine. But it was just kind of this little aggravation. Anyway, yesterday I decided to do my long run, and I dropped something off at someone's house. It was something very easy to carry, and it was about 4.5K into my run. So I did that. I went in, I dropped the thing off, and I went back to the sidewalk and started my run, and all of a sudden, it was so sore. So I'm thinking, I don't think I can do this for 5.5 kilometers. But like what distance runners do, I just started doing it anyway. And it was really sore. Mm-hmm. I finished. Then once I got home and stopped actually running, I was out for the night. Like I was basically just laid out and I couldn't do anything. I couldn't lie down. It hurt. I couldn't sit down. It hurt. I couldn't stand up. It hurt. So anyway, I guess I'm a little bit stubborn, but the streak is still going. I don't know what's going to happen next week. How are you doing, Sheila?
I'm sure it'll keep going. I drugged him up. I was like, did you do this? Did you do that? And I got him pretty settled. So hopefully it'll heal quickly. I'm doing great. I had a very social week this week, and that was really nice, relaxing, not too crazy at work, not too slow. So that was nice. I just had a nice week. So that's all I can say. What about you, Elise?
I had a fairly relaxing week, so that was really nice. And I know looking forward to this week, we're supposed to have some really hot weather.
Yes.
So I may be thinking about busting up my bike or at least walking home from work a few times this week. So I'm looking forward to that. And I'm hoping to get back to the pottery studio on Saturday for a throwing class.
Oh, cool. That all sounds great. I'm hoping to bust out my bike tomorrow too. So we'll see how that goes.
Okay, well, the show was a bit on the longer side today, so our sign-off was a bit on the shorter side. Great for you guys to check in. We hope you guys enjoyed this week, and we look forward to seeing you again next week.
That is it for today's show. Please try and make wellness a priority.
You deserve it.
If you feel the need to talk to someone or ask for help, please do that.
Accept yourself for the person you are.
So long.
Adieu.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Goodbye.